I came here to change my life, and I guess that happened in more ways than I realized. A year ago, my close friend Angelo came here to get his own surgery finished and finally embrace his life as a trans man. But that never happened. Angelo was taken by a killer that targeted him for being transgender. I didn't know the details of how he died, but I'm honoring him this year by going through with it. I've suffered body dysphoria for too long and can't let fear get in the way. I know this makes me the prime target for this psycho, but I don't care. Dr. Richardson is the best in the business in the state anyway, and I had already been reassured that the top security measures were being taken. "We won't let anything happen to you while you're here, Mike," they said. Given the struggles I have had at home, being shunned by family and forced to even live on the streets for a while, it was beyond relieving to hear that they have my back. Then, Monday morning, my worst fear reared its ugly head. The killer that had snuffed Angelo was back in town, and the police were either clueless or helpless to stop it. This morning marked almost 4 victims. I heard the latest ones, a bisexual couple from the outskirts of town, had barely escaped with their lives. The killer must be seething to know that they didn't succeed in taking their lives, I said with a smirk as I watched the news. A few of the others in the waiting room gave me a curious glance. They didn't understand how frightening this was, especially for me today. Day 4 meant someone like me was on the chopping block. But I'm here in the hospital, I reassured myself, and the statement from the last victim claimed the killer was a delivery driver, so they won't be anywhere near here. I will be fine, I said to myself. "Michelle, are you ready to get prepped?" the head nurse asked. I tried my best to grit my teeth and ignore how she had just used my old name. Legally speaking, I hadn't been able to get it changed yet. I followed her to the back room and she instructed me to strip. "Leave your clothes in the bin," she said distractedly. "Rough day?" I asked, trying to keep things casual. I was already a nervous wreck. "Sorry, I don't mean to be rude. It's just, I've been dealing with some issues at home," she admitted. I glanced at her name tag. "Amber? I know that we just met, but if you need to talk, I'm here," I offered. "I appreciate that. It's just difficult seeing so many people reach their dreams, and then my life seems to be passing by." "What do you mean? Missed promotion? Husband always on the road?" I asked. "I guess a little bit of both. I'm sure you know this, but Dr. Richardson has been struggling to keep things afloat ever since last year." "You mean because of the patient that got killed? But Angelo wasn't murdered. It had nothing to do with the procedure," I said, my voice sounding shaky as I spoke and remembered my friend and Amber saw it. "Oh, I'm so sorry. You knew them?" the nurse asked. Angelo took the first step to reach his dreams. He wasn't scared. He inspired me to take a leap of faith myself. "Maybe you should do the same?" I suggested. Amber nodded absently as she got my IV going and said, "I wish it was that easy." I could tell she was tired of talking for the moment, so I let the last comment slide as I sat and waited for the doctor. Truth be told, even though I had just given her an amazing pep talk, I still wasn't entirely confident of what the future held for me. I was about to change my entire life. It was what I had been looking forward to for half of my adult life. I should feel excited. But something felt off. I was becoming sleepy, my vision blurred. I tried to reach for the call button, but already I was losing consciousness. Had someone slipped something into my IV? Those worried thoughts fell into a deep darkness as I fell completely out of it. I don't know how much time passed, but when I woke up, I was now lying flat on my back with my legs and wrists strapped down. It looked like I was in an old operating room, something not used for years. The lights flickered and the air felt colder than death. This was all wrong. I had seen Dr. Richardson's OR before. He'd given me a tour. This was definitely not the right place. I felt my heart race as I heard a door slam shut and tried to figure out what sort of torture I was about to endure. This had to be a bad dream. It can't be happening, I thought as the figure stood over me. It was Amber. "What? Why am I here?" I asked. She looked at me with pity, the way sometimes parents do when they think their kids don't know any better. She was holding a syringe in her right hand that looked like it was full of blood. "Did you know that your friend actually died right here, in this very room?" she commented. As though the reality of my situation was hitting me, I said it out loud. "You're the one that killed him. You poisoned Angelo." The correct terminology is blood poisoning. He was type negative B, and all it took was a quick switch. Amber paused as she looked down at me, her pity turning to hatred. And Angelo died on the table like the pathetic animal they are. "You're a monster," I whispered. "No, Michelle, you are. My husband and I are merely the exterminators," she snarled as she placed the needle next to my arm. I frantically tried to move, screaming for someone to help, but I was alone. Alone with a serial killer that just revealed to me that they were working alongside an equally devious partner. "The delivery driver. That's how you haven't been caught. Each of you covers the other's tracks," I whispered as I felt my heart begin to race. Then her phone rang. She huffed in frustration, placing the needle to the side on a small rolling tray, and walked toward the hallway. "What is it?" Whatever they were just about to inject into my body, Amber was sure it was going to have the same reaction it had on Angelo. I was about to die if I didn't act fast. "Of course I know the police are looking for you, you klutz! You were sloppy, and now I'm the one cleaning up your mistakes!" She was distracted. I had a chance and started to sway the gurney, pushing it ever so slightly toward the tray. The syringe was right in my grasp. "Don't try to call me again. Pretty soon the cops will tap my phone and realize our connection." Amber snapped as she hung up. In that last second, I managed to swipe the needle and hide it just under my palm. My only hope was to attack her, try to defend myself. She was still distracted, trying to recompose herself as she sighed and looked toward the tray. "What did you do with it?" she snapped as she grabbed a scalpel, pressing it against my neck. I spit into her face. In that brief moment of confusion, as we were close to each other, I grabbed the needle and jabbed it into her thigh, plunging it down. Amber grabbed it and tossed it to the ground in shock, her hands shaking as she muttered, "You fucking idiot! You do realize that now we both die! You will rot down here, forgotten by anyone that cared for you!" She had dropped the scalpel on the ground. My mind raced. I pushed my whole weight to make the gurney fall toward her, forcing the nurse to fumble back as I used my fingers to grab at the scalpel and cut up my bonds. I had mere seconds to act. I was sure that Amber was about to attack me again, but to my surprise, she was running. As I got the last bond free and stood up, I chased after her. She didn't make it far. Already, the tainted blood was pushing through her system. "Michelle, you have to help. I'll die if you don't," she whispered as I stood over her. I thought about how easy it would be for me to take this nurse's life, take revenge for what she had done to Angelo, and maybe countless others. But no, I'm stronger than that. Instead, I helped her to her feet and then knocked her unconscious, just to make sure she didn't attack me again. "It's Michael, you idiot," I mumbled as I found the elevator and got us both out of there. Amber was taken to the ER, and I gave my statement to the police. "I can't believe it. All this time we had a pair of serial killers under our noses," Tommy said, shaking his head. "What matters is that they will both be brought to justice and no one else will get hurt," Nurse Lois said. I wanted it to be a happy ending, but I should have known better. Just as I finished giving my statement, one of the ER CNAs came up with the report. "Amber escaped. They are in the wind," Mark explained. All of us exchanged a worried glance even as Mark checked his phone and said, "I guess one of them sent this message earlier too. I don't think they're going to just stop killing." I was hired for night maintenance for an old hospital downtown, picking up trash and soiled linen. Nothing fancy. My new boss, Rick, explained to me that my shift started every night around 9 p.m. "Your first and most important task is to lock all the entryways. We aren't a 24-hour emergency room, and after-hour visitation isn't allowed. We just don't have the staff to handle it." He rambled on for about another 15 minutes about how it was something that they wanted to try to do in order to compete with a newer facility in the upper part of the city, but I wasn't really paying attention. All that I really heard was that besides myself and a few floor techs and night nurses, the hospital was going to be empty. This locks all doors in the building. I suppose by default it also opens them all too. Use it to get into any office you need for cleaning, he told me, passing me a small red and gold key. Seems a bit strange to have just one key to lock up the whole place, I commented. Rick chuckled and gave me a pat on the shoulder. We're not Fort Knox, son. All right, so what do I do after that? I've got a printed schedule of the offices you'll clean every night. No need to break your back doing it all at once, am I right? He passed me some laminated papers that detailed the job and added that it was important to follow the schedule. Marty, the old janitor, got a bit lax and wound up in a bit of trouble, Rick explained. What sort of trouble? I asked, but Rick couldn't say. I was told to report to work that very night. I didn't really have much time to do anything except go home and shower. In the back of my mind, I couldn't help but to wonder why anyone would not want to keep a job this cushy. But I wasn't about to blow a golden opportunity. Honestly, though, because I lived so far from the facility, I barely had time to make it back. In fact, by the time I had reached the hospital, the doors were already locked. I reached into my pocket and took out the master key that Rick had given me, unlatching the door and heading inside. It was midway open when I heard a shout from behind me. Hey, hold the door! I turned to see a man wearing blue scrubs rushing toward me. You're running late too, huh? Bruce, he said, shaking my hand as he came in. I took the gesture and then started to lock the door again. Just as I heard the latch close, a car horn honked and I saw a man with a pregnant woman trying to get in. Hey, hold on! My wife's going into labor! He shouted. At first, I hesitated, thinking that if there was an exception to any rule, this would be it. But I had no idea whether or not the staff at ER would be able to help her, so I shouted through the glass. The emergency room closes at 9. You can go uptown to St. John's. Are you fucking serious? It's 1 minute past! The man shouted back. He looked enraged. I looked down at the key and sighed. I didn't really want to make a mistake on my first day, so I just shrugged and told him sorry again. He said a few more words I won't care to repeat here, beating on the glass a few times. Honestly, his whole demeanor went from frustration to furious in less than 2 seconds, and it was a bit scary. Then Bruce grabbed my shoulder. Hey, what's wrong with you? We can't turn a pregnant woman away, he remarked. But Rick said, he give you that whole spill about the doors and the schedule? Come on, the guy is obviously just wound a little too tight, he remarked, gesturing toward the door. Let them in. Look at her hurt. I looked up again at the irate husband and sighed. Fine, but if I get in trouble, this is your ass, not mine, I muttered. Sure, I'll get them up to labor and delivery, Bruce told me. The husband gave me the stink eye as he helped his wife inside. Then he and Bruce both took her to the elevator as I locked up again and finally headed for the time clock. 15 minutes later, I had grabbed my cleaning cart and was on my way to the first office. Honestly, I was a bit worried about the fact that I had also forgotten the schedule Rick gave me. But once I found a few empty offices and realized the whole floor was empty except for me, I realized I had nothing to be afraid of. I went from office to office doing that for the next 2 hours, finally relaxing when it seemed that nothing was behind the doors except for empty desks and bits of trash. I heard the jingle that played when a newborn is delivered over the intercom and smiled. Bruce had been right. The schedule was just micromanagement. Around 11:39, I took my first break and met a floor tech named Gina in the cafeteria. She was an older white woman that looked like she had just crawled her way out of a war zone. Gruff, tough, and no nonsense. When I explained who I was, she told me she didn't need to know much else. Just make sure you do the job right. Marty got sloppy in those last weeks. Didn't pay as much attention to details as he should. Got himself hurt. I recalled what Rick had warned me about too, and felt a strange, sickening feeling when she made that statement. What do you mean by that? I mean, it's just a silly schedule, right? He had a heart attack, son, And what do you think caused that? He made mistakes, went in places that he shouldn't have, she barked back. Like what? Doesn't matter. Just stick to the schedule, she insisted. I don't even have one, I admitted sheepishly. Her eyes widened and she said a few cuss words. What have you been doing all night? I rambled off the rooms I had cleaned, and with each number her facial expression got more and more disturbed. Did you at least lock them back? Gina snapped. Yeah, of course, but what is the big deal? Bruce said it wasn't important. Bruce? Gina repeated. Yeah, he works on the shift before you. I met him at the time clock. Son, I have been here for 13 years. Ain't no Bruce here. Now it was my turn to be confused. Then, who did I talk to? I whispered. It felt like my heart was going to burst from my chest. I was so nervous. Then an alarm came on over our heads. Code pink. What the hell did you let in here? Gina snapped as I mentally replayed the exchange. I had unlocked the door and let both Bruce and the young couple in. But the door had been locked before then, and Bruce didn't have a key. Fuck! I shouted as I dropped everything and ran toward the stairs. I made it to labor and delivery in about 6 minutes, grabbing the first nurse I could find. What's happened? I shouted, but he told me what I already knew. Someone snatched a baby! She shouted. I was told I had to wait there as security began to search the hospital, but no sign of Bruce or the infant was found that night. I remember telling the police to check the footage of when I let them in, but apparently the camera only showed me and the young couple. To this day, I don't know who Bruce was or how he got away with this, but I've learned to always lock the doors at 9 p.m. and keep them locked no matter what.